The conference room fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. Captain Day-Ho stood with his arms crossed, watching the faces of Earth's leadership appear one by one. His jaw tightened when he saw Ambassador Ji Woo's expression. She looked defeated, and that scared him more than any battle ever had. They voted unanimously, Ji Woo said quietly. Her voice carried across the room despite its softness. All three elder species agreed. We have 5 years to evacuate every human colony and return to Earth. After that, any human found outside the Sol system will be killed on sight. The room erupted in angry voices. General Park slammed his fist on the table. Lieutenant Tae-min jumped to his feet, his young face flushed with rage. But Dai-Ho remained still, his mind already calculating the impossible logistics of moving billions of people across light years of space. On what grounds? Someone shouted. Ji-Woo pulled up the official coalition decree. The crystalline Valthari had authored it, their flowing script translated into harsh human words. Humanity was deemed too unpredictable, too aggressive, too dangerous to remain part of galactic civilization. 3 incidents were cited as evidence. The first was the New Jakarta colony's refusal to surrender newly discovered mineral deposits. The colony had spent 20 years terraforming that planet. When the Halaxy claimed the world for themselves, citing some ancient territorial right, the colonists had armed themselves and refused to leave. Eventually, they negotiated a compromise, but the coalition remembered it as human defiance. The second incident involved Dr. Hai Jin's research team. They had developed a quantum slipstream drive that cut travel time by 60%. It was a breakthrough that would revolutionize space travel. But they had done it without coalition approval, without submitting their research for review by the elder species. The Valthari called it dangerous and reckless. The third was the worst. A human patrol ship had fired on a Valthari surveyor near the outer colonies. The human captain claimed the surveyor was in restricted space and refused to identify itself. The Valthari claimed it was an unprovoked attack. 2 Valthari had died. The human captain was executed by his own government to prevent war, but the damage was done. These are excuses, Tae-min said bitterly. They're afraid of us. That's the real reason. Tae-Ho finally spoke. It doesn't matter why. What matters is we can't fight them. Their combined fleet outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. If we resist, they'll wipe out every human in the galaxy within a month. The room went quiet again. Everyone knew he was right. Humanity had 200 warships. The coalition had 200,000. The math was simple and brutal. Ji Woo continued her briefing. The Valthari will enforce a blockade around the Sol system. No ships in, no ships out. They'll station monitoring satellites at the system's edge. We'll be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. A prison, someone muttered. A cage, another agreed. Tae-Ho thought about his daughter on the colony at Proxima Centauri. She was 7 years old, born under an alien sun. Earth would be a strange world to her. He pushed the thought away and focused on the immediate problem. How long to evacuate everyone? He asked. The logistics officer pulled up charts and numbers. We have approximately 4 billion people spread across 47 colonies. Our fastest ships can carry 10,000 people each. Even running constantly, using every civilian vessel we can commandeer, we're looking at 4.5 years minimum. That gives us a 6-month margin for error. Not enough, Tae-Ho said. What if something goes wrong? What if ships break down? What if the coalition decides to start the blockade early? And people die, the officer said flatly. Over the next week, humanity mobilized for the greatest exodus in its history. Every ship capable of spaceflight was drafted into service. Factories that once built colony habitats now churned out transport vessels. The colonies began the heartbreaking work of packing up entire civilizations. Dai-Ho visited the evacuation staging area on New Beijing. He walked through crowds of silent families waiting to board the transports. Children clutched toys and looked confused. Adults tried to hide their tears. They were leaving behind homes they had built with their own hands, farms they had cultivated for generations, cities they had designed and constructed. An old woman grabbed his arm as he passed. "Captain, what did we do wrong? Why do they hate us?" He had no good answer. "We're going to survive this," he told her. "That's what humans do. We survive." Meanwhile, Dr. Hai Jing received a coded message from Earth's Security Council. She was ordered to remain behind with a small team on a hidden research station. Her work on the quantum slipstream drive was too valuable to abandon. The message contained specifications for a new project, classified at the highest level. It was called Black Horizon. She read through the technical documents with growing amazement. They wanted her to develop technology far beyond anything currently known. It would take decades of work, maybe longer. But if she succeeded, humanity would possess something the galaxy had never seen. "How long do I have?" she asked her military liaison. "As long as it takes," came the reply. "You'll be completely hidden. The Coalition will never know you're out here. When humanity is ready to emerge again, we'll need every advantage we can get." The evacuation continued month after month. Entire fleets of transports moved in convoy, protected by Dai-Ho's warships. The Coalition watched, but did not interfere. They seemed content to let humanity leave peacefully. Te-Min flew escort missions until his ship's systems were worn out from constant use. He watched families board transports with whatever possessions they could carry. He saw the last lights go dark on colonies that humans had spent generations building. It filled him with a rage that burned cold and patient. "Someday," he told Dai-Ho during a refueling stop, "we'll make them regret this." Dai-Ho looked at the young pilot. "Maybe, but first we survive. Then we rebuild. Then we become strong enough that no one can ever do this to us again." With 3 months remaining before the deadline, the last transport lifted off from the final colony. Dai-Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet shrink behind them. His daughter was somewhere in the convoy ahead, heading toward an Earth she'd never seen. The Coalition's monitoring ships appeared right on schedule, taking up positions around the Sol system. The cage door was closing. Humanity was going home, whether they wanted to or not. But in the darkness between stars, on a research station that appeared on no charts, Dr. Hai Jin and her team began their work. Black Horizon was just beginning. The Coalition thought they had contained humanity's threat. They had actually given humanity exactly what it needed most: time, isolation, and a reason to become something greater than they ever imagined. Possible. The elder species would learn their mistake. But not for a very long time. 75 years had passed since the last human transport entered the Sol system. Commander the Jin stood before the massive viewport of the orbital defense station, staring at the blockade markers that ringed humanity's home. She had never seen what lay beyond them. She was born after the exile, raised in a solar system that had become humanity's entire universe. Her grandfather, Captain Dai-Ho, had died 10 years ago. Before his death, he had told her stories about the colonies, about worlds with purple skies and double sunsets. She listened to those stories like ancient myths, tales of a time before the cage. "Commander, the morning reports are ready," said Captain Min Seok, approaching from behind. He carried a datapad filled with the same information they reviewed every day. Nothing ever changed on the border. The Coalition's automated satellites watched them. Human defense stations watched back. Both sides remained perfectly still, locked in a standoff that had lasted 3 generations. But Min Seok's expression suggested something was different today. What is it? The Jinn asked. Another coalition ship went missing. That's the 5th one this month near the boundary zone. The Jinn took the data pad and scrolled through the report. A Quorum energy scout had been patrolling the neutral space just outside the blockade. Its last transmission was routine. Then nothing. No distress signal. No debris. It simply vanished. What do the coalition authorities say? The same thing they always say? Equipment failure. Navigational error. They're not investigating. The Jinn frowned. 5 ships in 1 month isn't a coincidence. No, Min-Seok agreed. It's not. Deep in the asteroid belt, Professor Bong-ho worked in a laboratory that existed in official records as a mining station. He was the 3rd-generation lead scientist on the Black Horizon project. His grandmother, Dr. Haijin, had started the work 75 years ago. His mother had continued it. Now it was his responsibility to complete what they had begun. The laboratory was a maze of quantum field generators and zero-point energy collectors. Equipment that would have seemed like magic to the people of the exile era now filled entire chambers. Humanity had not wasted the 75 years behind the blockade. While the coalition stagnated, humans had pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Run the test again, Byung-ho ordered his team. They activated the primary array. Energy readings spiked beyond what conventional technology could measure. In the center of the containment field, fundamental forces bent in ways that should not be possible. Matter responded to thought. Quantum particles danced to human command. Stable, reported the technician. All parameters are green. The field is holding. Byung-ho allowed himself a small smile. Black Horizon was working. After 75 years of research, testing, and development, they had done it. Humanity had mastered something the elder species had never even theorized was possible. Send the results to Earth Command, he said. Tell them we're ready. Across the galaxy, far beyond humanity's reach, the coalition was tearing itself apart. The unity that had once forced humanity into exile had crumbled. The Galaxy had been expanding aggressively for decades, claiming worlds and resources with increasing boldness. The Quorum, who existed as energy-based consciousness spread across vast distances, found their territory invaded by Galaxy mining operations. When the Quorum protested, the Galaxy ignored them. When the Quorum retaliated by disrupting Galaxy energy supplies, the Galaxy declared war. The Velthari, the crystalline beings who had authored humanity's exile, remained neutral. They withdrew to their core worlds and refused to intervene. The coalition, built on the authority of the 3 elder species, had no mechanism for resolving conflict when those same species couldn't agree. War Mother Sethys commanded the Galaxy battle fleets. She was a product of her species' hive culture, bred for aggression and conquest. She viewed the Quorum as obstacles to be removed, nothing more. When her advisors suggested negotiation, she had them executed for cowardice. The Quorum are parasites feeding on the galaxy's energy, she declared to her fleet commanders. We will burn them from every nebula they infest. We will claim what is rightfully ours. Her fleet swept through disputed territories, destroying Quorum consciousness nodes by the billions. Each node represented thousands of individual Quorum minds. The death toll was staggering. Resonance Choir 7, one of the largest Quorum collective consciousnesses, felt each death like a wound to its own existence. It reached out through the quantum foam that connected all Quorum minds and called for total war. We will not be exterminated. Choir 7's voice resonated through energy channels spanning star systems. We will fight until the Galaxy are broken, or we are extinct. There is no third option. The galaxy burned. Worlds caught between the 2 sides were devastated. Species that had been part of the coalition for thousands of years suddenly found themselves homeless. Their planets transformed into battlefields not back in the Sol system. Captain Min Seok monitored the conflict through long-range sensors and intercepted communications. The intelligence painted a picture of chaos and destruction on a scale humanity had never witnessed. "They're killing each other," he said to Commander the Jin during their daily briefing. "Millions dying every day. Maybe billions. And the Velfari just watch." The Jin studied the reports in silence. Part of her felt satisfaction. The species that had exiled humanity were now suffering the consequences of their own arrogance. But a larger part felt something else. Pity, perhaps. Or concern. "What do you think we should do?" Min Seok asked. "Nothing," the Jin said. "We stay behind our walls. This isn't our fight." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. She thought about all those civilian populations caught in the crossfire, dying because their leaders couldn't stop fighting long enough to find peace. On Earth, the unified government debated the same question. The president, a woman named Su Jin, listened to her advisors argue for hours. Some said humanity should celebrate the coalition's collapse. Others said they should reach out and offer to mediate. A few suggested this was the perfect time to reclaim the colonies. Professor Byung-ho was summoned to address the government. He stood before them and presented what Black Horizon had achieved. The room fell silent as they watched demonstrations of technology that bent reality itself. "We could end this war," Byung-ho said simply. "We have the capability now. Our ships would be untouchable. Our weapons would be irresistible. We could impose peace. Or we could impose our will," said the Secretary of Defense, "and become exactly what they feared we would become." President Su Jin made the decision that would change everything. "We will observe only. Place monitoring stations at the edge of our territory. Watch what happens. If the situation deteriorates further, we'll reconsider. But for now, let them remember we exist. Let them wonder what we've been doing all these years." Commander the Jin received her orders and smiled grimly. The Home Defense Fleet began redeploying ships equipped with Black Horizon technology. They moved to the very edge of the blockade boundary, visible to Coalition sensors, but making no aggressive moves. The Coalition's automated monitoring satellites detected the ships immediately. Alert messages went out to military commands across the galaxy. But those commands were occupied with the war. The alerts were filed away and forgotten, all except one. A junior Velfari analyst noticed something strange in the sensor data. The human ships registered power signatures that shouldn't be possible. She flagged it for review, but her supervisor dismissed it. "Humans?" the supervisor said with disdain. "They've been locked away for 75 years. They're probably killing each other by now." "Ignore it." The analyst filed the report anyway. Somewhere in a vast database, buried under billions of other data points, was evidence that humanity had become something new, something beyond what the galaxy understood, but no one was paying attention. They were too busy destroying each other to notice the cage they had built was about to open. And what emerged would not be the frightened, exiled species they remembered. It would be something that would make them regret every choice that led to this moment. High Arbiter Kylix stood in the crystalline chamber that served as the Coalition's command center. His transparent body refracted light into rainbow patterns across the walls. Around him, holographic displays showed the spreading war in horrifying detail. System after system fell into chaos. The death toll had exceeded 10 billion and showed no signs of stopping. "Why won't they listen?" asked one of the junior arbiters. "We've sent peace proposals to both sides. They ignore us." Kylix's form flickered with what might have been anger or frustration. "Because we have no authority anymore. We wrote the laws of the Coalition, but we have no way to enforce them. The Holoxy and Quorum are too powerful to be threatened. and too proud to accept mediation. The real problem, though Kylix would never admit it aloud, was that the coalition had built its entire structure on fear and hierarchy. The elder species ruled because they were old, not because they were wise. When those elder species stopped agreeing with each other, the whole system collapsed. War Mother Cephis commanded her fleets from the bridge of her flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Her compound eyes tracked multiple displays simultaneously as she coordinated attacks across 17 star systems. The Galaxy were winning, she told herself. The quorum casualties were mounting faster than they could regenerate their consciousness nodes. Target the energy nebula in Sector 47, she ordered. Maximum bombardment. I want every quorum presence in that region eliminated. Her weapons officer hesitated. War Mother, our intelligence suggests there are over 50 billion quorum consciousness nodes in that nebula. If we destroy it, then 50 billion parasites will be gone, Cephis interrupted. Fire. The bombardment lasted for 3 hours. Specialized weapons designed to disrupt energy patterns tore through the nebula like storms through clouds. The quorum collective consciousness screamed across quantum channels as billions of individual minds were extinguished in moments. It was the largest single massacre in galactic history. Resonance Choir 7 felt the deaths like having limbs torn away. The collective consciousness that had existed for over 1 million years was diminished in ways that could never be repaired. Grief and rage merged into a singular purpose. Retaliation. Choir 7's voice boomed across quorum communication networks. Total retaliation. No mercy, no restraint. The Galaxy will pay for this atrocity with their own extinction. The quorum launched a counterattack using weapons they had never deployed before. They manipulated stellar radiation to create killing waves that swept through Galaxy-occupied space. Entire fleets were cooked alive inside their ships. Colonies shielded by planetary atmospheres fared no better. The radiation penetrated everything. 2 billion Galaxy died in the first day of the counterattack. 3 billion more over the following week. In the crossfire, civilian populations of other species suffered and died. A refugee convoy fleeing the violence carried over 2 billion souls from a dozen different races. They were farmers, teachers, artists, children. They had no part in the war. They just wanted to escape. War Mother Cephis received intelligence that the convoy was passing through a system she had designated as a strategic zone. She assumed the quorum were using the civilians as cover for a military movement. She ordered an attack. The convoy was defenseless. When Galaxy fighters swarmed around the civilian transports, there was no resistance because there were no weapons. The transports tried to signal their non-combatant status, broadcasting peaceful intentions in every known language. The Galaxy ignored the signals. 2 billion civilians died in less than an hour. The massacre was broadcast across the galaxy before the Galaxy could jam the communications. Species that had remained neutral watched in horror as children and families were slaughtered for no strategic gain whatsoever. The galaxy reeled in shock. This wasn't war anymore. It was extinction-level madness. Commander The Jin watched the footage in her command center. She felt sick. Captain Min Seok stood beside her, his face pale and drawn. "We have to do something," he said quietly. "What can we do?" The Jin replied, "We're on the other side of the galaxy, locked behind a blockade. By the time we could reach them, we have Black Horizon," Min Seok interrupted. "Professor Bong Ho says our ships can cross the distance in 3 days. 3 days, Commander. We could be there before the next massacre happens." The Jin looked at him, and back at the screen, showing bodies floating in space. She thought about her grandfather's stories of the colonies, of the communities humans had built and been forced to abandon. She thought about the old woman who had grabbed her grandfather's arm and asked what humanity had done wrong. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Request permission to intervene." The debate on Earth lasted 6 hours. It was the fastest decision the government had ever made. President Su Jin authorized Operation Guardian. Humanity would emerge from its exile, not for conquest or revenge, but to stop the killing. 3 days later, human ships appeared simultaneously in 17 star systems. They materialized from quantum slipstreams without warning. Their arrival announced only by the strange energy signatures that set off alarms across coalition military networks. The ships were beautiful and terrifying. Sleek black hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible grace, defying conventional physics. The power readings they generated made coalition sensors think they were malfunctioning. From the lead vessel, Commander the Jin's brother, Captain Day 1, transmitted a message on all frequencies. His voice was calm, but carried an authority that made veteran warriors pause. "This is Captain Day 1 of the Human Defense Fleet. We are here to evacuate civilians from war zones and establish humanitarian safe zones. Any military vessel that approaches our operations will be disabled. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. Stand down or be neutralized." War Mother Cephis heard the transmission and laughed. Humans? The weak species they had exiled 75 years ago? She immediately ordered 40 of her battle cruisers to intercept the human ships. "Teach them," she commanded, "what happens when insects challenge the Galaxy." The battle was over before it began. The Galaxy warships closed on 3 human vessels, weapons hot and ready to fire. Then something impossible happened. The Galaxy weapons simply stopped working. Power cores that had been running for decades suddenly went cold. Targeting systems crashed. Even their kinetic weapons froze, the projectiles hanging motionless in their barrels. The human ships didn't fire a single shot. They didn't need to. They moved past the helpless Galaxy fleet like ghosts, heading directly for the refugee zones where civilian transports were hiding. What did they do to us? The Galaxy weapons officer screamed. "Everything is dead? Nothing works." War Mother Cephis stared at her displays in disbelief. 40 warships, the pride of the Galaxy fleet, floating powerless in space. And the human vessels hadn't even slowed down. Across the galaxy, every major military power watched the same scene play out in system after system. Human ships appeared, established safe zones around civilian populations, and rendered any approaching military vessel completely helpless. No weapons fired. No threats issued. The humans simply made all conventional warfare impossible within their operational range. High Arbiter Kylix received reports from his intelligence network. The Velthari had the best sensors in the galaxy, and those sensors were telling him something that terrified him to his crystalline core. The humans were manipulating fundamental forces. They were rewriting the rules of physics in localized areas. It was technology so far beyond anything the Coalition possessed that comparing them was meaningless. How? He whispered. How did they advance this far? The answer was obvious, though Kylix didn't want to admit it. The Coalition had given humanity 75 years of isolation, 75 years without interference or distraction, 75 years to do nothing but research and develop and grow. The elder species had spent those same years fighting over territory and resources. Stagnating in their arrogance, Resonance Choir 7 reached out to the human ships through quantum communication channels. The collective consciousness was curious despite its rage and grief. It asked a simple question. Why do you help us? We voted to exile your kind. We gave you no mercy. Why do you show us mercy now? Captain Day 1's response was broadcast across every channel. Because someone has to stop the killing. Because we remember what it feels like to be helpless and afraid. Because power means nothing if you don't use it to protect those who can't protect themselves. We came back not for revenge, but to save lives. All lives, even those who wronged us." The galaxy heard those words and fell silent. Humanity had returned, and they were nothing like what anyone expected. The rescue operations continued for 3 weeks. Human ships moved through war zones with complete impunity, establishing safe corridors and evacuating civilians by the millions. Any military vessel that approached found its systems mysteriously failing. Weapons went offline. Propulsion stuttered and died. Even basic life support flickered until the ships retreated beyond the human operational range. War Mother Ceres watched her mighty fleet reduced to helplessness. She tried everything: different weapons frequencies, new tactical approaches, overwhelming numbers. Nothing worked. The moment her ships entered range of the human vessels, they became useless metal boxes drifting in space. Her warriors, bred for conquest and combat, could do nothing but watch as humans rescued the very populations Ceres had targeted in her command chamber. She reviewed the intelligence reports for the 100th time. Her technical advisors had analyzed the human energy signatures and reached a conclusion that seemed impossible. The humans were manipulating zero-point energy fields and quantum probability. They were making conventional weapons physically unable to function in their presence. "How do we fight an enemy who can turn off our weapons?" asked her chief strategist. Ceres had no answer. For the first time in her career, she felt something she had never experienced before: fear. High Arbiter Kylix called an emergency coalition council session. The holographic chamber filled with representatives from every member species. Most of them looked confused and frightened. A few, Kylix noticed, looked hopeful. Those were the species who had suffered most under the old hierarchy. The ones who had watched the elder species squabble while their worlds burned. "The humans have returned," Kylix announced unnecessarily. Everyone in the galaxy knew by now. They possess technology far beyond our understanding. They are currently evacuating civilian populations from war zones. The question before us is simple. What do we do? Destroy them. War Mother Ceres growled through her communication link. They are a threat to galactic order. With what? Asked a delegate from one of the smaller species. Every weapon we've sent against them has failed. They don't even need to fight us. They just turn off our ability to fight. There must be a way, Ceres insisted. No technology is perfect. We need time to study their capabilities, find weaknesses. We've had 75 years, interrupted Resonance Choir 7. 75 years to wonder what the humans were doing behind their blockade. We assumed they were regressing, fighting among themselves, dying slowly. Instead, they were evolving beyond us. Perhaps the question isn't how to fight them, but why we would want to. Kylix felt his crystalline structure vibrate with frustration. The Choir 7 makes a point. The humans haven't attacked us. They've only disabled military assets that threatened their rescue operations. They've saved billions of lives that would have been lost in this war. Perhaps we should be grateful rather than hostile. But Kylix didn't feel grateful. He felt obsolete. The Velthari had ruled the coalition for thousands of years because they possessed the most advanced technology. Now, overnight, they had become primitive by comparison. Commander Dejin received a formal invitation from the Coalition Council to address them. She accepted via holographic link, appearing in the chamber as a life-sized projection. She wore her military uniform, and her expression was cold and professional. "Commander the Jinn," Kylix began. "The Coalition requests an explanation. How did humanity achieve such advancement in only 75 years? The Jinn smiled without humor. "You gave us the greatest gift possible. You left us alone. While you stagnated in your certainty and arrogance, we evolved. While you squabbled over territory and resources, we transcended scarcity. While you clung to weapons of destruction, we developed tools of creation. She let that sink in before continuing. 75 years ago, you exiled us for being dangerously unpredictable. You feared our advancement. So you isolated us, thinking you were containing a threat. Instead, you removed every distraction and obstacle. You gave us time, focus, and motivation. We used all three. You could have asked to rejoin us, said one of the delegates. Why did you stay hidden? Why would we want to rejoin you? The Jinn replied bluntly. The coalition is built on fear and hierarchy. The strong dominate the weak. The old control the young. You exiled us because we didn't fit into that structure. Now you're afraid because we've become stronger than you. Nothing has changed except the hierarchy. We're not interested in your power games anymore. War Mother Sethis' image flickered with barely controlled rage. Then why are you here? Why interfere in our war? Because, the Jinn said quietly, we remember what it's like to be helpless, to watch our homes threatened, to lose everything. We're here to save those who cannot save themselves. When the last civilian is safe, we're returning to Seoul. And if you ever threaten innocent lives again, ours or any others, we won't just disable your weapons next time. We'll disassemble your fleets, atom by atom. The silence that followed was profound. No one doubted she meant every word. Captain Min Seok discovered something while reviewing intercepted Velthari communications. The intelligence made his blood run cold. He brought it directly to Commander the Jinn. They knew, he said without preamble. The Velthari knew about Black Horizon years ago. They have spies who reported on our research. They've been watching our advancement all along. The Jinn read through the decoded messages, her expression darkening with each line. High Arbiter Kylix had detailed reports on human technological progress dating back 40 years. He knew humanity was developing revolutionary technology. More than that, the messages suggested Kylix had deliberately allowed the Halaxy Quorum War to escalate. He wanted to force us to reveal our capabilities, the Jinn said, understanding flooding through her. He knew we'd have to intervene if the civilian casualties got bad enough. He used billions of lives as bait to study what we'd become. Min Seok nodded grimly. What do we do with this information? The Jinn thought for a long moment. Then she scheduled another communication with the Coalition Council. When the council assembled, the Yun didn't waste time on pleasantries. She broadcast the intercepted Velthari intelligence reports for everyone to see. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized what they were reading. High Arbiter Kylix, the Jinn said, her voice cutting through the noise. You've known about human advancement for decades. You let this war escalate, let billions die, because you wanted to see what we could do. You used your own coalition members as test subjects. Kylix's crystalline form flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. I was trying to protect the coalition. I needed to know if humanity was a threat. By killing billions of innocents? The Jinn interrupted. By letting your own civilization tear itself apart? Some protection. The other delegates turned on Kylix with fury. The smaller species who had suffered most in the war were especially vocal. They had lost entire populations while Kylix watched and took notes. You're removed from authority, declared the delegate from a species that had lost 3 colony worlds. Effective immediately. The Velthari no longer speak for this council. Kylix tried to protest, but his transmission was cut off. The crystalline being's long reign as the coalition's leaders was over, ended in disgrace. Resonance Choir 7 addressed Commander the Jinn directly. Humanity has shown us mercy we didn't deserve. The Quorum formally apologize for our role in your exile. We ask humbly for your help in ending this war. War Mother Sethis, watching her allies abandon her cause, finally understood that the war was lost. Not because the galaxy were defeated militarily, but because the entire galaxy now saw her species as the aggressors they had always been. Without coalition support, without any ability to resist human intervention, continuing the fight was suicide. The galaxy will cease hostilities, she announced bitterly. We will withdraw to our core territories. The war ended not with treaties or negotiations, but with exhausted acceptance. Both sides were too afraid of what humanity might do if the killing continued. Commander the Jinn watched from her flagship as the galaxy's military forces retreated and began the long process of counting their dead. Did we win? Asked Captain Day-1. The Jinn shook her head. No one won this war. But at least it's over. Now comes the harder part, making sure it never happens again. The war's end brought no celebration, only exhaustion. The galaxy counted its dead in the tens of billions. Entire species had been reduced to remnants of their former populations. Worlds that had thrived for millennia were now lifeless rocks. Their atmospheres burned away by weapons that should never have been used. Human ships remained in the devastated regions, not as conquerors, but as aid workers. They used their matter synthesis technology to create shelter, food, and medical supplies for the survivors. Technology that the Coalition didn't even know was possible was now being used to rebuild what the Coalition's war had. Destroyed. Professor Byung-ho coordinated the reconstruction efforts from a command ship. He watched as automated systems converted raw asteroids into building materials, energy into nutrients, quantum patterns into medical nanites. Black Horizon wasn't just a weapon system. It was a tool for creation on a scale that made old technologies look like stone axes. How long until the refugee populations are settled? Asked one of his assistants. 3 months for emergency housing, Byung-ho replied. 6 months for permanent infrastructure. A year before they're self-sufficient. He paused, looking at the data streams. If we had this technology before the war, none of this suffering would have been necessary. Scarcity drove this conflict. We just proved scarcity is obsolete. On Earth, President Soo-jin addressed the unified government. The question before them was simple but profound. High Arbiter Kylix, in his final official act before being removed from power, had proposed that humanity rejoin the Coalition as the senior member species. The humans would have complete authority over all military and technological development. Every other species would answer to them. It's everything our ancestors might have wanted, said the Secretary of Defense. Revenge for the exile. Power over those who wronged us. The ability to shape galactic civilization however we choose. It's also a trap, countered the Secretary of Science. They want us to lead because they're afraid. The Coalition is built on hierarchy and fear. If we take that position, we become what they always feared we would be. Conquerors. Tyrants. We'd be proving them right. The debate lasted for weeks. Commander the Jinn was called back to Earth to give her perspective. She stood before the government and spoke with the authority of someone who had seen the war's horrors firsthand. My grandfather told me stories about the exile, she said, about watching people cry as they left homes they built with their own hands, about the rage he felt at being forced to abandon everything humanity had achieved. He died wondering if we'd ever get justice for that. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But I've seen what justice looks like when it comes from a position of power. War Mother Sethis thought she was bringing justice to the Galaxy cause. Kylix thought he was protecting the Coalition. They were both wrong, and billions died because of their mistakes. If we take control of the Coalition, we'll be making the same mistake. Power doesn't bring justice. It just creates new injustices. President Soo-jin made the decision that would define humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. We declined the Coalition's offer. The announcement shocked the galactic community. Commander the Jinn delivered humanity's response in a transmission broadcast to every inhabited system. "The coalition is built on hierarchy and fear," she said. "You exiled us because you were afraid. Now you want us to lead because you're afraid. We're not interested in ruling you. We're not interested in your power structures. We have our own path." She outlined humanity's alternative proposal. The Soul Accord. It would be a new alliance, completely separate from the coalition. Any species could join as equals. There would be no senior members, no hierarchy based on age or military strength. Decisions would be made by consensus. Membership was voluntary. The only requirements were a commitment to defend sapient life and to never initiate aggression. The most radical provision was technological sharing. Every species in the Soul Accord would share their advancements freely. No more hoarding of knowledge. No more artificial scarcity. The progress of one would benefit all. "We're offering you a choice," the Jinn concluded. "Continue with the old system that led to this war, or join us in building something new. Something based on cooperation rather than domination. The decision is yours." High Arbiter Kylix, stripped of his authority, but still monitoring from his home world, expected the galaxy to reject humanity's proposal. The coalition had existed for thousands of years. No one would abandon it for some idealistic, human fantasy. He was wrong. The first species to join the Soul Accord were the ones who had suffered most under coalition rule. The low-tier civilizations, who had been dominated by the elder species for millennia, saw an opportunity for genuine equality. Within a month, 40 species had signed the Accord Charter. Resonance Choir 7 was next. The Quorum collective consciousness had been devastated by the war, losing billions of individual minds. They were grateful to humanity for ending the killing and eager to work with beings who seemed to value all life equally. The Quorum joined the Soul Accord, Choir 7 announced. "We share our knowledge of energy manipulation freely with all. Members, we hope that in cooperation, we can heal from this war and prevent future ones. The combination of Quorum energy technology and human quantum field manipulation created breakthroughs that revolutionized faster-than-light travel. Ships that once took months to cross the galaxy could now make the journey in days. The technology was immediately shared with all Accord members. As the charter required, the galaxy refused to join. War Mother Cephis, facing internal pressure from her own people, who were exhausted from war and impressed by human restraint, agreed to sign a non-aggression pact instead. The galaxy would keep their independence, but would open trade relations with the Accord. "We do not kneel to anyone," Cephis declared, "but we acknowledge that humanity has proven itself worthy of respect. The galaxy will honor our agreements with the Soul Accord. Those who violate this pact will answer to me personally." It was, Captain Min Seok noted with amusement, as close to an apology as the galaxy were capable of giving. The Velfari remained isolated. The crystalline beings retreated to their home worlds, bitter and resentful. They had ruled the coalition for thousands of years, their technology the standard by which all others were measured. Now they were obsolete, surpassed by a species they had considered primitive. Some among the Velfari argued for joining the Accord, but the older generation refused. Pride, it seemed, was a universal trait among powerful species facing decline. 50 years passed. The Soul Accord grew to include over 60 species. The galaxy experienced a golden age of cooperation and shared prosperity. Wars became rare. Scarcity became a historical curiosity. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Human-led expeditions ventured into unexplored regions of the galaxy. They discovered new civilizations and offered the same choice humanity had given to the known species. Join the Accord as equals, or remain independent but peaceful. Most chose to join. A few chose independence. None chose war, because everyone had heard the stories of what happened when you threatened innocent lives in humanity's presence. Commander the Jinn, now an elderly woman, stood in the rebuilt settlement on what had once been New Jakarta colony. Humans had returned to the worlds they'd been forced to abandon 75 years ago. But they hadn't come as conquerors reclaiming lost territory. They'd come as members of a multi-species community, sharing the worlds with whoever wanted to live there. Captain Min Seok, now a decorated admiral, joined her at the observation point overlooking the city. Your grandfather would be proud, he said. Maybe, the Jinn replied. He wanted revenge. We gave him something better. We gave him proof that humans are stronger than their anger. A message arrived from Earth. The Velthari had finally requested admission to the Soul Accord. The younger generation had convinced their elders that isolation wasn't safety, it was just slow extinction. Should we accept them? Min Seok asked. The Jinn smiled. Of course. The Accord is built on the idea that everyone deserves a second chance, even those who denied us ours. On Earth, a monument stood in Geneva. It was a simple black stone with inscriptions in over 100 languages. Human tourists visited it daily, bringing their children to teach them about the exile and what came after. The inscription read, "They forced us to leave. We chose to return. Not for revenge, but for redemption. May all species find the strength to rise above their worst moments, as humanity did in its darkest hour." Below it, a second line had been added after the war. Remember, consequences are the children of choices. Choose wisely. Young Hana, a girl of 7, read the inscription aloud to her father. What does it mean? She asked. Her father, a veteran of the humanitarian missions, knelt beside her. It means that bad choices create bad results. The coalition chose fear and exile. The result was war and suffering. But humanity chose mercy and cooperation. The result was peace and prosperity. Will there be more wars? Hannah asked. Maybe, her father admitted. People make mistakes. Species forget their history. But as long as we remember what happens when we choose fear over hope, when we choose domination over cooperation, we have a chance to do better. Hannah looked up at the stars visible, even in the daytime sky. Ships from a dozen different species moved through Earth's orbital space, a sight that would have been impossible a century ago. I want to go to space someday, she said. You will, her father promised. And when you do, you'll see a galaxy that learned the same lesson humanity learned. That strength means nothing without wisdom. That power is meaningless without compassion. That the most dangerous thing any species can do is believe they're better than everyone else. Across the galaxy, in 100 different languages and 1,000 different forms, species told the same story. The humans who were exiled. The humans who returned. The humans who changed everything not through conquest, but through choice. And when young members of those species asked if it was really true, if humans were really that different, their elders would point to the thriving multi-species communities, the shared technology, the absence of war. Yes, they would say, it's true, because humans learned something the rest of us forgot, that the only way to escape the cycle of violence is to refuse to continue it, that the only way to change the galaxy is to change yourself first, that consequences are inevitable, but you get to choose which ones you create. The galaxy had forced humans to leave. Humans had chosen how to return. That choice made all the difference.